Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. As has been often noted and pointed out of the four engines of national growth, namely domestic private consumption, private investments, government spending, and exports, the only one firing and giving momentum to the Indian economy at present happens to be the engine of exports. The rest of them are down and uncertain. India's merchandise exports hit a high of $33.14 billion in August 2021, an increase of 45.2% as compared with the last year. And this happened on account of a strong international demand and high commodity prices in global markets. The total exports during the 4-month period of April to August 2021 have been at $163.7 billion, recording a jump of 67% as compared to the same period last year and a 23% jump as compared to exports during the same period in 2019. Encouraged by this performance, the current year's target for exports has been set by the government at $400 billion as against $290 billion in the last financial year and $313 billion in the financial year 2019-20. This export growth that India achieved in the period ended August 21 has been due to higher shipments of engineering goods, which went up by 58.8% on account of a sharp increase in demand from countries like USA, UAE, and China. They jumped because of an 88% increase in exports of gems and jewelry, and also because of a 140% increase in the exports of petroleum products from India. The rise in exports has been chiefly because of a recovery in crude oil prices and due to a spurt in global demand for gems and jewelry. Both these exports, which is petroleum products and gems and jewelry, are import intensive, and that explains why imports during August 21 jumped. They went up by 51%, led by an 88% increase in imports of gold alone. The point to note here is that if we exclude petro products and gems and jewelry exports from the total exports of India, then the rise in exports in August is a mere 3%, and that in no way compares with the reported growth of 45% on a year-on-year basis. Like on many earlier occasions, India sees itself as an alternate to China in world markets, and it thus believes that its exports can shoot up big time. A recent report from the Punjab, Haryana, Delhi Chamber of Commerce has identified 75 products from 9 sectors that can take our exports to $750 billion by 2027. And those exports would be to various global markets, according to this report. These products identified by the report include items ranging from fish to meat to cotton, and from electrical machinery to vehicles to aircraft also. The target markets for these exports identified by the report are markets like USA, UK, European Union, Russia, UAE, China, Australia, etc. These 75 products that the report talks about constitute about 21% of global trade today, and India's share in it at the moment is a minuscule 3.6%. The Chamber further says that to achieve this target of exports, we need policy reforms which include flexible labor laws, which include a much improved ease of doing business in India, and of course, an improved cost of doing business in India. Yet another report in this regard comes from the Parliamentary Standing Committee of Commerce. The report says that India needs to relook its export strategies and policies across the board in order to achieve much higher export growth rates. It says that India needs to step up its export promotion. It needs to penetrate new export markets and thus increase its share in global trade. The Parliamentary Committee report also says that the Indian exporters are at a disadvantage when trading with USA and the EU nations. And according to it, India must have free trade agreements with USA and the EU in particular in order to scale up its exports there. All this incidentally coincides with the government in a highly belated move announcing the release of much delayed export incentives of 56,027 crores, hoping that it will help the exporters to meet their export commitments and take up new orders. These are those MIES incentives which the government had held back for many, many months. It has now released them. We don't know when will they be disbursed. The government may gloat over India's export performance so far this year, unmindful of the fact that India is no greater player in the global merchandise trade, and that these very exports that we talk about can suddenly nosedive in the coming months itself because of several uncertainties in geopolitics and in world trade. There is no certainty that this kind of an export trajectory will continue from India. Even about this export performance, let us do a reality check and see whether it is worth gloating over or not. If India's exports hit a high of $33 billion in August 2021, then the exports of China in the same month hit a high of $294 billion, an increase of 25.6%, with the top exports of China being high-value products like electronics, high-tech products, clothing, and clothing accessories. China is almost 10 times the size of India when it comes to exports. And it was incidentally the 14th consecutive month of a continued increase in Chinese exports. Further, as against India's total exports of $290 billion during the last financial year, the comparable figure of Chinese exports was $2,600 billion, which is $2.6 trillion, showing how puny our exports as compared to those of the communist nation. Whether we hate China or we do not, the indisputed fact is that Chinese exports surpass those of India by leaps and bounds, and that primarily has to do with its government's export focus, which ensures that the cost of manufacturing in China is far lower than that in any other nation, and it also ensures that the speed of its outbound shipments is better than any other exporting competing nation. A useful comparison in respect of cost of production of mobile phones shows the robust export ecosystem of China, which makes it difficult for a tardy and bureaucratic nation like India to compete with. While due to the incentives of 4 to 6% under the PLI scheme that have been announced, the cost of production of mobile phones in India is expected to reduce by 6 to 9%. The cost reduction in the case of China, due to a number of comparative factors, is almost 3 times, which is it is in the range of 19 to 22%. The factors due to which the cost of production of mobile phones in China is much less than that of India include: the first one, it gives subsidy for plant and machinery, because of which cost of production there comes down by 3%. It also gives interest subsidy on working capital, which reduces the cost of production in China by 3.5%. It also gives a labor subsidy that again reduces the cost of production there by 2%. It has better ease of doing business, because of which the cost of manufacturing in China goes down by 3%. China has a favorable impact of 2% of the cost of production because of our research and development subsidy. Income tax exemption reduces the cost of production there by 2%. And other factors like the cost of power, the cost of logistics, the cost saving on account of building leaseholds and industrial land rentals, each of them bring down the cost of production in China by 1% each, which makes Chinese products cheap and cost competitive in global markets. And that explains why India is not able to compete with it. If you look at all these factors that make China unbeatable in the cost of manufacturing and production, which is factors like ease of doing business, tax exemptions, government subsidies for labor and machinery, interest subsidies, logistics, and availability of land and building at subsidized rates, then you will realize that the onus to create an overall ecosystem in India for exports, an ecosystem which facilitates and fosters exports and give them a momentum, is primarily on the government of India. The government needs to take the lead and act fast, and therefore it truly gets no marks when it decides to release the promised export incentives, which it has now announced after a delay of 18 months, during which period, because of its refusal or reluctance to release the export dues, the cash flow and business and the profitability of Indian exporters have suffocated and they have suffered. It is quite apparent that the world desperately wants an alternate to an aggressive China, and India can certainly be that alternate. But that does not mean that the global consumer will be willing to buy and import goods from India at prices which are higher than what they pay to the Chinese exporters. The Indian government may not have had the money to give generous subsidies to Indian exporters like China does, but it does have the machinery, the administrative and governance machinery to improve the overall ease of doing business in India, to improve the cost of doing business in India, and to improve the speed of logistics and of doing overall business in the country. Even if we get our act together in these matters of administration and governance, India's exports will shoot up. It will add to India's cost competitiveness. And with that, India will at least be able to start taking on China. Asking the government to improve governance and administration is certainly not asking too much. We think it is a basic right of exporters and all those doing business in the country. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.